Welcome back to the Dershow. You're used to having me talk about subjects that are very controversial, gets lots of emails, people disagree, people agree. Tonight, I think I'm going to talk about something that we can all agree about, and that is the greatness of Bill Russell, the greatest basketball player in history and one of the greatest people in American history. I'm wearing my Celtics t-shirt to commemorate his long life and his too early death. I first met Bill in 1964. I met him through my dear friend, Red Auerbach. Red Auerbach was a close friend of the judge for whom I clerked, Judge David Bazelon. And when I moved to Boston, I had never been in Boston. Red Auerbach took me under his wing. He got me season tickets, paid for them obviously, but season tickets right in the front row of midcourt in the Celtics. I was actually in the Boston Bruin penalty box. That was the penalty box during the hockey games, but during the basketball games, they were right up in the front. I sat 4 rows in front of Red Auerbach, and we spent a lot of time talking. And in fact, when some of the players later resigned, retired, like Larry Bird and Bill Russell, they would come and sit next to Red Auerbach, and Red would invite me up. He always had 4 seats that were his, and so he would often invite me up. So I got to sit next to Larry Bird. I got to sit next to Bill Russell, John Havlicek, Buck Cousy, all the great Celtics. I got to go into the locker room on numerous occasions, and with Bill Russell, I got to sometimes have dinner with him, although he didn't eat it. Before the game, Red would invite the coaches, some of the other people, the managers, 7 or 8 people to his office, where he would always eat the same thing, a pastrami sandwich. In fact, I often got it for him from Rubens Deli in Brookline, Massachusetts. I would bring him the pastrami sandwich. Bill would never have it, never touched the pastrami. It was before the game. And in fact, Bill Russell had a routine when he was playing. I met him in the office mostly when he was coaching and after he was coaching. But when he was playing, he would always, this sounds terrible, but it's true, he would always throw up before the game. Not so much out of being upset or nervous, but he wanted to cleanse himself, because when he got on that field, it was on that court, it was just so intensive, so amazing. I just want to show you, I have one piece of memorabilia that is very interesting. This is my seat from the Boston Garden, really uncomfortable, but nobody noticed. And it's signed by Bill Russell. And it has a piece of the parquet floor that is famous in the Boston Garden. So I went to Celtics games from 1964 until I retired from Harvard in 2015. I was told that I was the longest standing consecutive season ticket holder. I don't know whether that's true, but I had my tickets for a long, long time, and I saw all the great games. Let me start with the game that everybody knows about, of course. Havlicek stole the ball. It's over. It's over. Havlicek stole the ball. Remember that? I was there. And I don't want to start by putting Bill down, but people forget that the only reason Havlicek stole the ball is because Bill Russell made one of his few mistakes. What happened, they were playing Philadelphia, 7th game of the Eastern Finals, and the Celtics were 1 point ahead, and they were about to win because they had the ball out of bounds under their own basket, and Bill Russell threw the ball in, and he was going to throw it. He aimed it at one of the Celtics players, and at that point, Philadelphia would have to foul the Celtics player to have any chance of winning, but Russell didn't see the wires. Any of you who are my age remember that basketball hoops used to be held up by wires, and the wire is foul territory. And Russell threw the ball in. He threw it high, and it hit the wire. Out of bounds, and Philadelphia got the ball with 5 seconds to go. And of course, everybody remembers what happened after that. It was inbounded, I think, by Hal Greer. And Havlicek, what happened is he counted. He had his back to the basket. I remember it so vividly. He had his back to the player throwing in the ball as if he was asleep, and he was counting 5, 4, 3, because he knew it had to be thrown in 5 seconds. And at 4, he jumped out and he grabbed the ball, threw it to somebody else. The game was over. And Bill Russell thanked Havlicek so much, because Bill Russell would have been the GOAT, not the greatest of all time GOAT, but the GOAT of the game, because he had thrown it into the wire. And so John Havlicek rescued Bill Russell. Bill Russell, on many occasions, rescued not only Havlicek, but the whole team. I have never seen a basketball player have as much dominance as Bill Russell. And I am including, I've seen them all, obviously. I've seen Chamberlain, I've seen LeBron, I've seen, I've seen them all. I've seen many, many times Michael Jordan. No player determined the outcome of a game more than Bill Russell. Bill was, as he was called, the Secretary of Defense. He created the kind of defense that became part of basketball. He was only, I think, 6'8" or 6'9". They called him 6'10", but he was 6'8" or 6'9". But he had a wingspan that was enormous, an arm stretch that was enormous. And this was before some of the rules changed about standing in the paint. And he would stand essentially by the foul line, and you just couldn't get the ball in. And if you got it in and the guy got it, he would be there to block it. And then as soon as he blocked it, he didn't do what many other players did. Players blocked it and they swatted it away out of bounds or just into the air. Not Bill. He tapped it to one of the Celtics, who would then lead a fast break. And they changed the nature of basketball, fast break basketball. It had been used in college. Somebody else I knew, Red Sarachek, who was a great friend of Red Auerbach, both redheads from Brooklyn. Red Sarachek, who coached the Mighty Mites, the Yeshiva University basketball team, but was regarded as a legendary coach. He basically developed the fast break the way it was used for the next 20 years. And Red and he used to meet in the Catskill Mountains and swap stories and scout players. And but without Bill Russell, what good would it have been? Bill Russell basically was the one who was able to create that way of scoring baskets. And, Bill Russell only averaged 15 points a game, according to statistics. Let me tell you, he averaged 40 points a game. If you count the scores that he prevented from happening, if you count the blocks that would have gone in, and give him credit for that, he probably was the highest scorer in modern history. He refused to keep score against Chamberlain. He and Chamberlain had obviously a rivalry, and Chamberlain broke all the records. He scored 100 points in a game. I wasn't there for that one, but he scored 100 points in a game. I did see him score 30 and 35 points in a game. But Bill Russell changed the score more than Chamberlain by his defensive play. Chamberlain was 3 inches taller than he was and bigger in every way, but it was Bill Russell who dominated the sport. Now imagine you're Bill Russell, and you grew up, born in the South, you moved to the West Coast as he did, plays for a West Coast team which wins 2 championships, and then gets drafted by Boston. It was Red Auerbach's brilliance that got him drafted. He was pick number 3. He was not pick number 1. Boston had only the 3rd draft choice, but they got Russell. And he moves to Boston, which at the time was one of the most racist cities in America. I know, because I moved there at a little later. And it was dominated by guys like Bulger, Whitey Bulger's brother, younger brother, who was the president of the Senate and the head of this and the head of that, and the strongest opponent of desegregation in Boston. And Bill went through terrible things. I mean, his house was broken into, racist things were said to him. When he came back to the house after it was broken into, the people didn't take his money. They destroyed his trophies, and pardon me for saying this, but it's true, they defecated in in his and his wife's bed. People yelled racial epithets at him on the court, more than Jackie Robinson. I was there too with Jackie Robinson. I was in Brooklyn. I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. I went to many Brooklyn Dodger games between 1947 and 1959. When I left Brooklyn, Dodgers beat me. They left earlier, but I stayed. And you'd hear racial slurs yelled at Jackie Robinson, particularly by opposing players sitting in the dugout. And finally, Major League Baseball put a stop to that. But in Boston, it was the fans, and Bill Russell, for that reason, never wanted to establish a close relationship with the fans. As he told his daughter in a brilliant essay that the New York Times reproduced yesterday, I didn't play for Boston. He said, I played for the Celtics. And he did. And his daughter, Karen, went to Harvard Law School. I know because I interviewed her and I took her around. And Bill Russell came to Harvard, and I took him to the library. Oh, the students after that just loved me. I brought Bill Russell to Harvard Law School, and we went and we had lunch in a Chinese restaurant in Harvard Square. And I'll never forget, Karen ordered what she ordered. I ordered my orange chicken, which I always order. And Bill Russell ordered two main dishes. And so I said, oh, Bill, thanks. You're ordering one for the table for us to share. Oh, no, Alan. No. It's for me. I'm big. I got to have two main dishes. I always have two main dishes. So he had his two main dishes. I had my orange chicken. And we went around Harvard Square, and we went to Harvard Law School, and I took him to my office. And we spent time there together. We spent time together in Red's office. We spent time together at All-Star games. He was not a close friend, but he was an acquaintance, and he liked me. I liked him. And I admired not only his skills. I was a basketball player. You won't believe that. I was a basketball player. I actually played in Madison Square Garden. I played for Yeshiva University High School, Brooklyn branch, boys division. And we didn't have a bad basketball team. We ended up winning the championship in our league, and we played against Manhattan Talmudical Academy, who won the championship in their league. And we played in a preliminary game before a Knickerbocker Syracuse Nats game, and I got to meet Dolph Shays and Harry Gallatin and Braun and Sweetwater Clifton and some of the great Knicks of the day. And the guy who I was assigned to guard was another short little Jewish guard like me. His name was Ralphie Lipschitz. You may have heard of him. He changed his name to Ralph Lauren. And both he and I were kind of chasers on the zone. We didn't get to play much. We were subs. But he dressed very, very well. That I remember. But that's enough about my basketball skills. They were, mediocre plus. I can still hit a jump shot, not much of a jump, but a shot from the corner. And I regularly beat my 27-year-old, really athletic grandson because I just take that shot from the corner. And he just can't make that shot from the corner like I can. I don't know why. But I still love basketball. I love watching the games. I love playing the game. And I loved rooting for Bill Russell. I was so honored to get to know the great Celtics. I got to sit next to Larry Bird for part of a season when he was part of the managerial team and sat in the stands with Red Auerbach. I got to meet Havlicek, and I got to meet obviously some of the other terrific players. Bob Cousy is still around. He's probably in his 90s. Just a great guy. Red Auerbach had a talent. He said, the first thing I look for in a ball player, obviously, is the basic skills. The second thing I look for is intelligence. He said, I only want smart players. And he said Russell was one of the smartest players he had. And the third thing I look for is character. He said, I want character. I want people who aren't out there, drinking and drugging it up. I want people with character. I want people who come to warm-ups. I want people who will show up on time. I want people who will support their other teammates. And He got that in Bill Russell. Bill was quiet when I knew him, but he was raging inside. He was raging against the racism of Boston and the racism around the rest of the country. He was an activist. He fought against racism. He was one of the few athletes who supported another one of my clients, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, the great fighter, was refused to be drafted and lost his titles and was threatened with jail. And I worked on his cert petition, challenging a search of his telephone or the wiretapping of his phone without authority. And Bill Russell supported him. A lot of athletes, including some African American athletes, didn't want to support Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was, a hard guy to support. He was such an egotist and so arrogant and, sting like a butterfly, float like a bee, or the opposite. Yeah. In any event, but Bill Russell supported him. And he also supported the kneeling for the national anthem. I don't agree with that myself. I understand it. The third stanza of the national anthem is pro-slavery and anti-Black. I wouldn't do it. I love America. I salute the flag. I don't say under God, by the way, when I salute the flag. I don't think that properly belongs in a Pledge of Allegiance in a country that has a First Amendment, but I say the rest of the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't support kneeling for the flag. He did. He sent a tweet of himself kneeling when Kaepernick was criticized and attacked for it. So he was not shy about expressing his views, and he didn't allow him to influence his game. I mean, his game was sacrosanct. He would do anything to win. He was also not a dirty player. I remember Lambier from the Detroit Pistons. We would boo him so loud because he was all elbows. Look, I once played basketball in the highest court in the land. That's the 5th floor of the Supreme Court. There's a basketball court up there. And I used to, not regularly, but occasionally play. And one of the people who would play, usually would be 9 law clerks and 1 justice from time to time. Justice Byron White, Whizzer White, who was an All-American football player. His problem as a basketball player is he didn't understand the difference between football and basketball. When I grew up, basketball wasn't a contact sport. Of course, you made contact, but it wasn't a contact. But I got an elbow in the mouth from Justice White, and I yelled out, "Son of it, Mr. Justice!" And he said, "No. When you're on the court, you can yell what you want. I hit you on the face. Shouldn't have done it. If this was a real game, you'd get a foul shot." So, I love basketball. I love stories about basketball, some of which are actually true. I remember Bill Russell. I remember him so well. I remember, and I wish his daughter Karen and the rest of his family solace, and may you be consoled with good memories. What great memories! What a great man. I call him the GOAT of GOATs. He was the greatest of all time basketball player, and maybe the greatest of all time athletes in the modern era. You can't compare somebody like that to Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth had no character, didn't do anything for the world except play baseball. Ty Cobb was a racist. But Bill Russell, was a great man in addition to being the greatest player, which is why I call him the GOAT of GOATs. And so his memory will be a blessing to all. And let's see if anybody else comes forward and can claim the title of GOAT in basketball. I think he earned it. I think he deserved it. He was the most transformative player in the history of basketball. He changed the sport for the better. It's changed again. It's a very different sport today, with offense dominating, his defense dominated, but more transforming than any player in the history of basketball. Write me if you disagree. Give me your candidate. Who do you think the GOATs are? And we'll have a good conversation about that at times to come. All right, let's turn to a couple of letters. I don't want to diminish the memory of Bill Russell by the negative letters that I get, but look, the show has always been divided into 2, so The Bill Russell part of it is over. My son Elon is watching the computer, and if there are any issues that come forward on Bill Russell, I'm happy to talk about those. Anything yet, Elon? No. Okay, so let's get to the letters. For all your smarts, you're so wrong. You're so stupid. You can't see this election was stolen. You're an ostrich with a head in the sand. Open your freaking eyes. Watch 2000 Mules. I watched 2000 Mules. I like the guy who did 2000 Mules. 2000 Mules doesn't prove the election was stolen. 2000 Mules proves there are problems with drop boxes and with the way in which elections are conducted. But it doesn't even come close to proving that this election would have come out differently had there not been those problems. I think there were problems. Pennsylvania was a problem. Pennsylvania shouldn't have allowed voters to vote after the legislatively imposed deadline. There may have been problems in other places, but it wouldn't have changed the election in enough states to turn it around. And certainly the popular vote was overwhelming, I think close to 8 million votes. What does Professor Dershowitz think about the Department of Justice FBI investigation of the Trump campaign toward 2016? I don't like it. I don't like FBI looking into political campaigns unless the evidence is just as clear as could be. Elections ought to be conducted without the aura of prosecution. But who do you think was hurt most? Hillary Clinton was hurt most. She may very well have lost the election largely as a result of FBI Director Comey making that ill-advised and violative of Justice Department rules statement in which he basically said what she did was wrong, even though she was not going to be indicted. That may have turned around enough votes to change the election. Who knows? There were other factors as well, too. But the Justice Department should stay out of elections while they're occurring. All right, then you do it once a show. Why has this incredibly vile and ugly pedophile been given a platform? He belongs on death row. That's what we need. You know, I have a number of people who've written me letters. One of the recent episodes, you have lamented about how debate in America is now dead. We would love to have it back. Yeah, but you know, this is what you're going to get when you have it back. Just name calling and lies and defamation. Part of me would love to sue people like this for defamation, but I have better things to do with my time. Thank you, Mr. Dershowitz, for a very interesting podcast. I truly appreciate the historical context. You know, it's interesting. I like doing the historical context, and a number of people write to me and thank me for it. A number of people say, no, it's boring. They don't want to hear that. They just want to hear screaming and yelling about the current election. Again, 80%, maybe a little bit more of my mail has to do with how Trump won the election and how any idiot knows that and how you could ever imagine that Biden would have won the election, even though we won by almost 8 million votes and overwhelmingly in the Electoral College. But that's most of my letters. I only read one or two of them. I ignore the rest of them, but that's most of the mail. That's not debate. That's just, you know, letting off steam. Okay, as an independent, not a GOP or Dem, and having actively campaigned for candidates on both sides, I commend you for your objective analysis of the important issues of the days. Thank you. Question: do you think that both Biden and Harris can be impeached for the border crisis? No. It's not even a close question. In order to be impeached, you have to commit treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. The Democrats tried to change that, tried to allow impeachment on the grounds of abuse of power, which would mean that 90% of American presidents could be impeached, or obstruction of Congress, which are vague terms. The Constitution says it has to be treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. You can argue what does other misdemeanors mean, but it doesn't mean having a difference in policy over the border wall in Mexico. It doesn't mean any of that. I gave a striking example in one of my books, and people attacked me all over the place. If a president, we don't have to imagine it's Trump or Biden, gets a call from Putin and says, you know, I really think Alaska should have never gone to America. It was a mistake. Could we get a do-over? Would you like to give Alaska back to us? And in exchange, we'll send you some oil. If a president decided to do that, of course, he'd be immediately not elected and everybody would hate him and it would be the stupidest thing. It wouldn't be impeachable. It's not a crime of any kind. It's not an abuse of power. President has the right. Jefferson had the right to buy Louisiana. Another president has the right to sell Alaska. Should they do it? Of course, they shouldn't do it. Should the Constitution be amended? Yeah, it probably should be amended. There probably should be broader criteria for impeachment. If a president really does abuse power, and there are specifics as to what he did to abuse power illegally, unlawfully, yeah, I would vote for that constitutional amendment, but I can't vote for a current impeachment or support a current impeachment which violates the Constitution. People say, oh, impeachment is whatever a majority of the House decides and whatever 2/3 of the Senate convicts on. No, senators and congressmen take an oath of office to support the Constitution. The Constitution says there are criteria for impeachment: treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors. Unless one of those criteria is met, it is unconstitutional to impeach. And if a president were to be impeached on that ground, he might not leave the House. He might not leave the White House and might say, no, I'm not doing it. It was an unconstitutional impeachment. So, transitions of power are great and important, but only if they're constitutional. Now, in this case, the election was fair and the transfer of powers should have occurred, though I don't blame lawyers for challenging it. I challenged the 2000 election on behalf of the voters of Palm Beach County, who, as the result of an illegal butterfly ballot, were denied the right to vote for a candidate they wanted to vote for. So I don't think that Rudy Giuliani or any of the other lawyers should be disbarred for having stretched their lawsuits. That's what lawyers do, and courts strike them down for doing it. That's the way the process works. But disbarment because you disagree with what a lawyer did is not, to me, the right approach. Okay. I am very worried that they will finally come up with some phony accusation that will be acted upon and Trump will be prevented from running again. If this happens, it will be up to us to save America. Well, by what means? I mean, what are you going to do if that happens? I think it would be unconstitutional. As you know, the 14th Amendment does provide, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments were basically the Civil War treaties of peace, does provide that a person who is guilty of insurrection can't hold office in the United States. Jefferson Davis and Judah Benjamin couldn't run for the Senate in South Carolina or Louisiana, but that provision was there for a real insurrection, for a war, a civil war. Remember how it started? Confederate troops fired on an American fort, Fort Sumter. I've always thought, and this is again some history, what if instead of firing on Fort Sumter, the leaders of the Confederacy, Lee and Benjamin, Davis, had said, look, we just want to separate. And they wrote a Declaration of Independence modeled on our Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for some states to secede from other states, it's called the United States of America, but we've decided to secede. Would Lincoln have invaded? Would he have started the war instead of responding to the attack on Fort Sumter? It's an interesting question. What was illegal about what the South did? Obviously, attacking the United States was treason. You picked up arms. That's the definition of treason, took arms against the United States. But what if they hadn't done that? What if they had simply voted to secede and issued a Declaration of Independence that was immediately supported by some European countries, as it would have been? Because remember, some of the European countries did support the South, and some were happy that the United States was so divided. It was a terrible, horrible war. It killed so many Americans. And what would have happened if there had been no invasion of Fort Sumter, but attack on Fort Sumter, but instead simply a declaration of secession? I don't know the answer to that question. Do you? If you do, write to me and let me know. While you make some good points on why Trump shouldn't or won't be indicted, the fact that we are even discussing this possibility speaks volumes. No, I think that we should be discussing this. What President Trump did was wrong. He should not have made a speech saying we have to fight like hell at a time when people were going to the Capitol. I would have advised him if he had asked my advice. Obviously, he didn't ask my advice. I would have advised him not to make that speech. I would have advised him to immediately, as soon as he saw that people were entering the Capitol, say, no, no, stay out. Don't do it. You're not following my orders. I asked you to protest peacefully and patriotically, not illegally. No, he should have done that sooner. All of that is true, but it doesn't make it a crime for him to have either done what he did or failed to do what he didn't do. He should have done it. He shouldn't have done the speech. But the line between doing something wrong and doing something criminal is a very important line that must be preserved at all costs. And I think a lot of people on the left, a lot of people are crossing that line improperly. And so I hope that there will not be criminal charges brought. But by the way, I hope the same thing about Hunter Biden, unless you can find smoking guns or clear proof. But I don't like targeting people. I don't like Republicans targeting Democrats, Democrats targeting Republicans. People should be investigated. And if the investigation turns out evidence of crime, that's one thing. But if you go looking for evidence of crime after you've targeted somebody, then you're Lavrenti Beria speaking to Stalin saying, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. We never want to become that country. See you tomorrow.